The private jet itself is often seen as a symbol of success, wealth, and exclusivity. For celebrities of Jungkook's caliber, such travel arrangements are not unusual, especially given the high security and intense schedules that make commercial flights almost impossible. But when the narrative shifted from Jungkook traveling with his team or colleagues to Jungkook flying privately with his father, the discussion suddenly became about something entirely different: family, humility, and the deeply human side of a superstar who, despite being watched by millions, still grounds his most significant experiences in personal relationships. Fans lost it as headlines quickly captured. The internet swelled with reactions, some celebrating the bond between father and son, others marveling at Jungkook's willingness to share the most luxurious aspects of his lifestyle with the person who helped him begin the journey in the first place. In a world where celebrities are often accused of forgetting their roots once fame takes hold, this small yet powerful gesture seemed to challenge that perception. To understand why this moment resonated so deeply, it's important to unpack it not only from the surface value of an idol treating his father, but also through cultural, emotional, and symbolic lenses. For South Korean audiences, the relationship between parents and children carries a weight shaped by centuries of Confucian tradition, where filial piety, devotion, and respect for one's parents is a cornerstone of identity. For international audiences, particularly in the West, the moment translated into something equally compelling: the image of a son who did not forget the sacrifices his family made for him, even as he soared into unimaginable heights of success. The private jet became less about luxury and more about symbolism. It was a stage, albeit one in the air, where Jungkook could quietly but powerfully demonstrate gratitude. And while celebrities have often been known to gift their families with houses, cars, or expensive possessions, what stood out about Jungkook's gesture was the intimacy of it. This was not a material object to be admired from afar, but an experience to be shared together, an act of bringing his father into his world, a space usually reserved for managers, stylists, executives, and fellow artists. In doing so, Jungkook didn't just elevate his father into the sphere of his stardom, he reminded fans that family remains central, even in the most glamorous chapters of life. Fans reacted the way they did because, in that single gesture, they could project multiple narratives. Some imagined the years of hard work and support Jungkook's father must have given his son during his early training days. It's well known among BTS fans that Jungkook moved to Seoul as a teenager to pursue his dream, a decision that would have been impossible without the support and trust of his family. To see him, years later, offering his father a seat on a private jet was like watching the story come full circle. The young boy who once relied on his father's guidance was now the man who could provide comfort, safety, and luxury to the very person who believed in him from the start. This emotional symmetry struck a chord with fans, many of whom began to reflect on their own lives, their own families, and the universal theme of wanting to give back to the people who raised us. Social media buzzed not only with admiration for Jungkook, but also with personal anecdotes people wrote about their parents, their hopes of repaying sacrifices, and their dreams of creating moments as meaningful as the one Jungkook created. In this way, the private jet became a collective emotional trigger, reminding audiences that beneath the lights of fame, human stories are what truly matter. Another reason the moment gained traction was that it didn't appear staged or intended for publicity. In the entertainment industry, gestures involving family members often double as branding opportunities, carefully timed for holidays or promotional cycles. But Jungkook's action seemed spontaneous, private, and organic. Fans felt it wasn't for cameras or headlines, it was for him, for his father, and for the bond they shared. That authenticity elevated the significance of the gesture. Even when the news inevitably spread, fans noticed the lack of excessive media framing. There were no official photo shoots, no branded partnerships tied to the flight, no orchestrated behind-the-scenes documentaries to capture the moment. Instead, the story filtered out through smaller reports and fan observations, which made it feel less like a PR move and more like a genuine personal choice that accidentally became public knowledge. This authenticity is particularly important when examining Jungkook's career trajectory. Despite being one of the most famous people on Earth, he has consistently maintained a balance between sharing and protecting his private life. Fans have often commented on how selective he is about letting the world into his personal relationships, which made the decision to include his father in such a visible way all the more powerful. The rarity of such openness amplified its impact. The deeper significance also lies in cultural symbolism. In South Korea, where respect toward parents is more than a social courtesy but a moral expectation, Jungkook's gesture served as a public reaffirmation of values that resonate deeply with his home audience. For international fans, it was an example of how fame can be redefined not just as an individual achievement, but as something shared with the people who built the foundation. In fact, the act of bringing a parent onto a private jet has symbolic layers across cultures. In Western celebrity culture, private jets are usually associated with excess, indulgence, or escapism. They are often criticized as emblems of wasteful luxury. But Jungkook's reframing of the jet as a vessel of gratitude shifted the narrative away from ego and toward love. Instead of being about distancing oneself from the world, the jet became about closing the distance between generations. This symbolic inversion fascinated fans. It challenged assumptions of what celebrity privilege means and how it can be used. By inviting his father into that space, Jungkook showed that luxury could be meaningful when it becomes a tool for connection rather than separation. To put it simply, fans lost it because the gesture tapped into multiple emotional registers at once. Admiration for Jungkook, nostalgia for his journey, reflection on family values, and even aspiration for their own lives. Social media posts exploded, not just with excitement, but with emotional analysis, memes, artworks, and essays dissecting what the act meant. The virality of the moment was not merely about a celebrity doing something unexpected. It was about how Jungkook's action provided a mirror for fans to see themselves, their relationships, and their ideals. The private jet, typically a symbol of unattainable wealth, was transformed into a universal story of love and gratitude. This is why the narrative did not fade quickly, as many celebrity headlines do. Instead, it became a touchstone, revisited in conversations about Jungkook's character and the kind of person he is behind the superstar image. Fans categorized it alongside his most defining personal gestures, proof that beyond his music, dance, and global influence, his humanity was what kept people invested. What fans also saw in this moment was a reflection of parental sacrifice. In interviews, Jungkook has occasionally spoken about how his parents were strict but supportive, raising him with discipline while still allowing him the freedom to grow into his dreams. Sacrifice, however, often goes unspoken. The financial strain of supporting a child through training, the emotional difficulty of separation, and the everyday challenges of maintaining a family life while one child pursues stardom, all of these invisible sacrifices are rarely discussed publicly. The private jet invitation became an indirect acknowledgement of those years of quiet endurance. For fans, it was a poetic way of seeing the son repaying the parent not through words or public speeches, but through a shared experience of luxury that symbolized achievement. It was as if Jungkook was saying, "You carried me when I had nothing. Now let me carry you, even if just for a flight." In South Korea, the father-son bond carries a unique cultural resonance. Traditionally, fathers are expected to provide and protect, often without overt displays of affection. For many Korean families, emotional intimacy is shown less through hugs or words and more through acts of service, silent support, or shared responsibilities. Fans who understand this cultural nuance saw Jungkook's gesture as breaking through that barrier, giving form to emotions that might otherwise remain unspoken. By inviting his father onto the private jet, Jungkook did more than provide comfort. He redefined the father-son dynamic in a modern context. He showed that success is not an individual crown, but something to be shared upward, passed back to those who built the foundation. In this sense, the act transcended celebrity culture and entered the realm of cultural storytelling, an illustration of filial piety in a globalized modern form. Why did fans around the world care so much about this? The answer lies in the emotional investment fans place in Jungkook's story. BTS's rise has always been about more than music. It's about narratives of resilience, authenticity, and human connection. Fans see themselves in the struggles and triumphs of the members, projecting their own experiences onto the group's journey. When Jungkook invited his father on the private jet, fans did not just see a superstar indulging his family, they saw a reflection of their own desires to give back to their parents. Many fans shared on forums and social platforms that they hoped one day to repay their mothers and fathers for sacrifices made in their own lives, whether through material gifts, experiences, or simply moments of shared happiness. Jungkook became a vessel for that universal dream, embodying the gratitude that so many wish to express. Interestingly, the choice of a private jet amplified the meaning. Unlike a car, a dinner, or even a vacation, a private jet is not just about luxury, it's about privacy, exclusivity, and shared space. Within that cabin, there are no strangers, no flashing cameras, no interruptions. It is an environment where father and son could sit together, perhaps talk, perhaps sit in silence, but most importantly, share an uninterrupted experience. For fans, imagining Jungkook and his father in that quiet space, away from the chaos of public life, added a layer of intimacy to the story. The jet became a metaphorical bridge between Busan and Seoul, between past and present, between father and son. Another reason this act captured so much attention was because it provided a counter-narrative to the usual celebrity lifestyle. In many cases, celebrities are portrayed as becoming increasingly isolated the more famous they become. Their inner circles shrink to managers, stylists, and industry peers. Families sometimes fade into the background, overshadowed by the machinery of fame. Jungkook's gesture disrupted that narrative. By placing his father beside him in one of the most exclusive experiences of his career, he reminded fans that family was not excluded from his world. In fact, family was central to it. For audiences weary of fame stories that involve estrangement, excess, or isolation, this act became a refreshing story of connection. Different cultures interpreted the moment in slightly different ways, which added to its virality. In South Korea, the emphasis was on filial duty and respect, a public reaffirmation of values deeply rooted in Confucian tradition. Media outlets highlighted it as a demonstration of Jungkook's grounded character, proof that despite his global fame, he remained loyal to his roots. In the West, the focus was more on the emotional bond between parent and child, with fans framing it as the ultimate thank you gift. The private jet was seen less as luxury and more as a dream-come-true scenario that many children aspire to give their parents. In Southeast Asia and Latin America, where family ties and gratitude toward parents are also strongly emphasized, the story became an aspirational tale, one that resonated deeply with fans who often balance modern ambitions with traditional family expectations. This diversity of interpretations further amplified the story's impact. It wasn't just a Korean story or a Western story, it was a human story that crossed borders seamlessly. In celebrity culture, most stories fade within days, replaced by the next headline. But Jungkook inviting his father onto a private jet has lingered because it encapsulates so many universal themes: gratitude, family, humility, and the idea that success is best when shared. It also offers fans a new lens through which to see Jungkook not just as a performer, singer, or global star, but as a son. That simple identity, often overshadowed by fame, became the center of the narrative. It reminded people that behind the stadiums and endorsements, Jungkook remains someone's child, someone who still finds meaning in sharing life's most precious experiences with his family. In this way, the moment transcended the usual boundaries of celebrity news. It became part of the mythology of Jungkook's life story, an anecdote that fans will repeat not because of its glamour, but because of its humanity.